For centuries, most people believed that the word Italian meant pure Roman blood, or a simple north to south split. But cutting-edge DNA has shattered that myth. Italians carry the echo of Ice Age refugees, ancient Anatolian farmers, Bronze Age steppe riders, and many waves of migrants, making modern Italy Europe's most intricate genetic mosaic. The story buried beneath the peninsula rewrites everything we thought we knew. So what did scientists really find, and how does it change the very meaning of being Italian? Jagged mountains carve out Italy's northern border, forming a wall that once seemed to separate the peninsula from the rest of Europe. The Alps, crowned with snow and riddled with narrow passes, have long stood as both obstacle and invitation. For early travelers, these peaks were daunting, but not impenetrable. Traders, herders, and entire families found their way through winding valleys and high-altitude trails, each crossing leaving a subtle trace in the human story of the land below. To the south, the Mediterranean stretches wide and blue, a highway rather than a barrier. Ancient sailors hugged the coastline, their ships moving between Greece, North Africa, the Levant, and the Italian shores. Every port, from Genoa to Naples to Palermo, became a meeting point for goods, languages, and people. The sea carried more than spice and silk. It brought new ideas, new crops, and new bloodlines, weaving them into the fabric of the peninsula. From the east, the open corridors of the Balkans and the Adriatic coast funneled waves of migrants and merchants. The land itself funneled movement. Rivers like the Po, the Arno, and the Tiber provided natural routes deep into the heart of Italy, while gentle hills and plains made passage possible for those on foot or horseback. Italy's geography has always been a crossroads. Its mountains, seas, and valleys shaped who could arrive and how. For over 10,000 years, these natural gateways set the stage for a constant flow of people. A flow that would define the genetic richness of the peninsula long before the first city of Rome was ever founded. Extracting DNA from ancient bones is part science, part detective work. The process begins in clean labs, where scientists don full-body suits to prevent even a stray eyelash from contaminating the evidence. Ancient skeletons, sometimes little more than fragments, are carefully drilled or sanded to collect powder from teeth or dense bone. Every step is tracked because a single modern cell can overwhelm what is left of a centuries-old genome. Once the material is prepped, researchers use chemical baths to coax out the fragile strands of DNA. Most samples yield only a fraction of the original genetic code, damaged by time, soil, and bacteria. Sequencing machines then read millions of short, broken fragments, which computers must piece back together like a puzzle with missing pieces. The result is rarely a complete genome. Instead, scientists compare what they recover against vast reference databases, searching for patterns that reveal ancestry, migration, and kinship. Bias is an ever-present risk. Not every burial preserves DNA equally. Cold, dry caves are ideal, while Italy's humid soil often destroys genetic material. The individuals who do survive in the record may not represent the population as a whole. As Beniamino Trombetta of Sapienza University puts it, each genome is a window, but never the full landscape. Despite these limits, the international teams working across Italy have now sequenced hundreds of ancient genomes. Their combined efforts create a timeline stretching back 12,000 years, allowing us to trace the origins and movements of the peninsula's people with more clarity and more humility than ever before. 12,000 years ago, as the glaciers retreated and Europe thawed, Italy became a sanctuary for some of the continent's last hunter-gatherers. These early bands found shelter in forested valleys and coastal caves, leaving behind stone tools and fragments of their DNA. As the climate warmed, these people did not just survive, they helped repopulate the continent. Genetic markers like the mitochondrial U5B3 lineage show that descendants of Ice Age Italians even spread back out into Provence and the Balkans, carrying a piece of Italy's genetic legacy far beyond its borders. Around 8,000 years ago, a new wave arrived from the east. Neolithic farmers traveling from Anatolia brought wheat, barley, and domesticated animals. Their stone axes and pottery marked a new way of life, but their greatest impact was invisible. They carried genes that would blend with those of the local foragers. This mixing was not a sudden replacement, but a gradual weaving together, hunter-gatherer and farmer, old and new. The result was a unique genetic blend, the first deep layer of ancestry that still runs through the veins of modern Italians. This early fusion set Italy apart. While other parts of Europe saw their ancient populations almost vanish beneath waves of newcomers, Italy's earliest inhabitants left a lasting imprint. The DNA of these first farmers and foragers forms the foundation of the Italian genome, a legacy of survival, adaptation, and quiet migration written into every cell. Around 4,000 years ago, a new force swept into the Italian peninsula. Bronze Age herders from the Eurasian steppes brought horses, wagons, and a genetic signature that would reshape Italy's population. Archaeologists still uncover traces of their arrival: bell beaker pottery, bronze daggers, and burial mounds from the Po Valley to the Tuscan hills. But the most powerful evidence is written in DNA. Ancient genomes reveal a sudden surge of steppe ancestry between 2000 BCE and 1600 BCE, especially in northern and central Italy. This was not a trickle, it was a major infusion, visible in the rise of the R1b M269Y chromosome marker, now common across much of Western Europe. These newcomers did not erase what came before. Instead, they mixed with descendants of Neolithic farmers and local hunter-gatherers, adding a new layer to Italy's genetic mosaic. Alongside new burial customs and metalworking skills, they likely brought languages that would evolve into Italic and Celtic tongues. Those cultural and linguistic changes traveled with the genetic shifts. By the dawn of the Iron Age, the foundations for the peoples who would become the Latins, the Etruscans, and their neighbors were already set, each carrying the shockwave of the Bronze Age in their blood. For centuries, the origins of the Etruscans have puzzled scholars and fueled legends. Ancient writers said they sailed from Anatolia, bringing a foreign language and mysterious customs to central Italy. Even in modern times, the idea of an exotic Eastern origin lingered, an outsider people distinct from their Latin neighbors. But the latest ancient DNA research tells a different story. Teams from Florence and the Max Planck Institute sequenced dozens of Iron Age genomes from Etruscan and early Latin burial sites. The results are striking. Etruscans and Latins, despite speaking different languages and building rival cities, are nearly identical genetically. Both groups carry a blend of local Neolithic farmer and steppe ancestry, with no sign of a recent mass migration from Anatolia or the Near East. Y chromosome and mitochondrial markers anchor them firmly in the European cluster, matching the genetic profile of people already living in the region for centuries. In Etruscan cemeteries, family lineages stretch back through multiple generations, showing deep local roots. Occasional traces of Eastern Mediterranean DNA appear, but only as rare outliers, consistent with trade, not colonization. The supposed Anatolian influx vanishes under the microscope. Instead, the Etruscans emerge as a native people, shaped by the same ancient forces as their Italic neighbors. This revelation upends generations of speculation and reclaims their place in the story of Italy's own soil. By the 8th century BCE, a new wave of settlers began to leave their mark on the southern tip of the peninsula. Greek colonists from cities like Corinth and Chalcis crossed the Ionian Sea, founding outposts that became some of Italy's most storied cities: Taranto, Syracuse, Cumae, and Naples. They called this region Magna Graecia, which means Greater Greece, a name that still echoes in local dialects and family names. The genetic legacy of these settlers is unmistakable. Ancient DNA from burial sites in Calabria, Apulia, and Sicily reveals a strong Aegean signature, distinct from the populations of central and northern Italy. Southern Italians and Sicilians today share more genetic markers with the people of Crete, the Cyclades, and the Greek mainland than with their northern neighbors. In Sicily, up to 1/3 of paternal lines can be traced directly to Greek colonists, a legacy visible in both Y chromosome studies and the clustering of southern Italians with Eastern Mediterranean populations in modern genome analyses. But the Greek imprint did not erase what came before. Instead, it layered itself onto a foundation built by Neolithic farmers and Bronze Age herders, producing a genetic blend unique to the South. The result is a population that bridges two worlds, European and Mediterranean, Italic and Hellenic. Long before Rome's rise, southern Italy was already a crossroads, its people shaped by centuries of migration, trade, and cultural exchange. Long before Rome's armies marched across Europe, the city itself was home to people whose ancestry can now be read from ancient skeletons buried in its earliest cemeteries. DNA from these Iron Age Romans, dating to the centuries before the Republic and the Empire, shows a genetic profile rooted in the heart of the peninsula. Their genomes carry the signature blend of Neolithic farmers and Bronze Age steppe herders, with traces of local hunter-gatherer ancestry still present. This mix is nearly identical to that found in neighboring Etruscan and Latin communities, anchoring Rome's founders firmly in the local landscape. Analysis of burial sites around the city, from humble graves to elite tombs, reveals little evidence of large-scale migration from the Eastern Mediterranean or Africa at this stage. Instead, the early Romans represent a stable population shaped by centuries of regional blending. This genetic baseline sets the stage for what comes next, a city poised at the center of Italy, about to open its gates to the wider world. When Rome reached the height of its power, the city became a magnet for people from every corner of the Mediterranean. Ancient DNA from imperial-era cemeteries reveals a dramatic transformation, as the genetic makeup of Rome's population shifted sharply toward the east and the south. Scientists sequencing genomes from sites like Castel Bertone and Isola Sacra found new ancestry components, traces of the Levant, Anatolia, and North Africa, blending with the old Italian core. Isotope analysis of teeth and bones confirms that many of these individuals were born far from Italy, their diets and water signatures matching regions as distant as Syria and Egypt. Gravestone inscriptions and burial goods tell the stories of merchants, artisans, soldiers, and enslaved people who arrived as strangers but who built their lives in the capital. In some burial clusters, first-generation migrants rest beside locals, their children carrying a mix of genes from across the empire. The result is a genetic surge unmatched anywhere else in ancient Europe, a city transformed by the constant arrival of new blood, ideas, and identities. In the cemeteries of Imperial Rome, the city's diversity is written into the ground. Archaeologists sorting through graves at sites like Castel Bertone and Isola Sacra uncover a mosaic of origins and stories. DNA and isotope analysis reveal that men, women, and children from the far reaches of the empire, Syria, Anatolia, North Africa, rest beside those with deep local roots. Some tombs hold imported luxury goods or bear inscriptions in Greek, Punic, or Aramaic, hinting at distant homelands. Others are simple, anonymous burials, likely belonging to enslaved people or workers who arrived with little but their own bodies. Class does not divide the migrants from the locals, freedmen and merchants, artisans and laborers all lie together. In some clusters, kinship links stretch across continents, as family members reunited in death after journeys that began hundreds of miles apart. The capital's population, once thought to be a monolith, is revealed as a living crossroads, its genetic makeup shaped by the hopes, hardships, and mingled lives of people from every corner of the ancient world. On the island of Sardinia, time moves differently. In remote villages like Sulo and Talana, families trace their roots back for centuries, and local dialects echo words from a distant past. Genetic studies reveal something extraordinary here. Sardinians carry some of the highest levels of Neolithic farmer ancestry found anywhere in Europe, up to 80%. Unlike the mainland, where steppe migrations and later arrivals layered new genes over old, Sardinia remained remarkably untouched by these waves. The DNA of its people preserves a snapshot of Europe before the Great Bronze Age upheavals, offering a living link to the first farmers who crossed the Mediterranean 8,000 years ago. In these hills and valleys, ancient lineages persist, a genetic time capsule quietly resisting the churn of history that reshaped the rest of Italy. Sicily's genetic story is one of constant layering. After the Greeks, new arrivals kept adding their own threads to the island's tapestry. Phoenician traders and Carthaginian settlers known as Punics left traces from North Africa, visible in certain mitochondrial lineages, but never overwhelming the older roots. In the early Middle Ages, Germanic Lombards moved into parts of Sicily and southern Italy. Their paternal lines added a subtle northern flavor to the gene pool. The Norman conquest in the 11th century brought yet another twist. Genetic studies find that 15 to 20% of Y chromosome lines in some Sicilian communities trace back to Norman men from northern Europe. Despite centuries of invasions and shifting rulers, the core ancestry of Sicilians remains anchored in ancient European and Aegean layers. Later arrivals left their mark, but never erased what came before. Genetic studies of living Italians reveal a striking pattern, stretching from the Alps to Sicily. Genome-wide analyses, using principal component and admixture methods, show that Italians are not a single group. Instead, they fall along a smooth gradient. In the north, people cluster closely with populations from France, Switzerland, and Central Europe, reflecting centuries of shared ancestry and migration across mountain borders. Moving south, the genetic profile gradually shifts. Central Italians form a bridge, carrying a blend of northern and southern signatures. In the far south and on Sicily, the genome clusters tighten with those from the Greek islands and the eastern Mediterranean, echoing the ancient Greek settlements and later contacts. This north-to-south cline is not a sharp divide, but a continuous spectrum, compressing the genetic diversity of much of Europe into a single peninsula. The structure seen in modern Italians today is the living result of thousands of years of overlapping migrations and local persistence. The result is both a mosaic and deep regional continuity. Today, Italian DNA connects more than 60 million people to over 12,000 years of migration and resilience, a living testament to human movement shaping identity. As science decodes these origins, the meaning of Italian expands beyond borders and bloodlines. In a world still struggling with questions of belonging and difference, Italy's true story reminds us, diversity is not the exception, it is the very foundation. What does that mean for how you see identity today?